Yes, I'd like to share a little bit more of my testimony. This happened when I was very young, around probably 6 years old, I think. Um, when I was in kindergarten, we had actually, after my mother and my father got divorced, we had moved out to California. And as my mom, she had family and everything out here, and so we moved, believe it was a couple towns over from my grandmother, and I started going to kindergarten. Well, when I went to kindergarten, I was in the bathroom one day after the recess bell had rang, and there was at that time they didn't like separate the kids, like the younger grades with the older grades. We were all pretty much around the same area. It wasn't really sectioned off. So anyways, there was a sixth grade girl that had come into the bathroom and kept me from going out of the bathroom, and she started to touch me inappropriately and everything and kiss on me and things like that. Well, I was kind of like in shock, and I didn't know what to do. I just I didn't really do anything. I didn't fight back, nothing. And then whenever she was done, she left the restroom, and I went out of the restroom and I went back to the class. Well, when I got back to the class, I got in trouble because I wasn't there when the recess bell had went off and come in like all the rest of the kids. And when they asked me why, I told them why, and they didn't do anything. They acted like, okay. Like they didn't even believe me. They didn't react really at all. They just kind of, okay, whatever. And so, of course, when I went home, I told my mom and everything. She was really upset and contacted the school, and they, like it was nothing, like I was making it up or something. And so they never really did anything. Well, my mom was really highly upset about that, and she was having other problems with her schooling and some things with the neighbor stuff going on and things, and it was getting hard for us to survive where we were at. The money that she was getting and going to school and everything, it was just really hard. And so she had decided to move in with my grandmother. But when we were still there at the place that we lived at, the apartment building, she was there for a little while. There was, and I think it was around the same time the thing happened at the school, but I'm not absolutely positive. I don't remember all the details of it, but I do know that a friend that she worked with or went to school with or something, anyways, was going in for some surgery, and she had a son, and so he needed to stay with us for a while when she went in to go to her surgery because she didn't have nobody to watch him. So me and my brother had bunk beds at the time, and my brother was, even though he was younger, we had him on the top bunk and then like the railing and everything. And so anyways, he was on the top bunk and I was on the bottom bunk, and there wasn't really anywhere else for this guy to sleep unless he slept on the floor. So because the bed being so big and I'm like little, like 6 years old, he would sleep in the bed. And of course he was probably, I would say probably 11, 12 years old, maybe something like that. He was at least almost double my age. So anyways, he would do things that he shouldn't do, and touching inappropriately and stuff, and told me that I needed to let him do that or he was going to hurt my mom and my brother or kill them. And so I was very terrified that if I didn't let him do whatever and not say anything, that somebody was going to think something wrong of me or not believe me because of the incident with the school, and that it would make problems, or that this kid, because I'm a little kid too, could actually hurt my mom and my brother. And my brother was like 4 years younger than me, so he's like almost two. So actually he was almost 2 at the time, because he didn't turn 2 until we went to my grandmother's house. But anyways, so of course that went and happened and occurred whenever he was staying with us when his mom was in the hospital. And I never really said anything until years later. So I carried that with me for the longest time, and it bothered me. But anyways, we moved from there, and we went and lived with my grandmother. We moved in there. And my grandmother was married and everything, and to her a second husband, because her first husband, my grandfather, had he was a drinker, and he I don't know what you would call it, a philanderer. Anyways, he went around, messed around and gambled and things like that and everything, and he would come get my grandmother pregnant and everything and then leave. And he had 2 other families, we found out years later. But anyways, so he had gotten cancer and everything, and he had died. He had passed away. Well, when my grandmother remarried, she had married a man that for all intents and purposes, I called him my grandfather, because he's really the only one I knew. I never really knew my real grandfather. I never met him. I wasn't around at that time. And anyways, my grandfather, he was a very, very big man, and he worked construction, and he was a Mormon when he met my grandmother. But because he got with my grandmother, and she wasn't Mormon, he got ostracized from the church. So he wasn't really a Mormon anymore. He didn't go to church or anything, the Mormon church or anything ever after that. And I believe both my grandmother and my grandfather were saved. And I don't remember them ever really going to church per se, occasionally here and there, but I did occasionally catch them when they were reading the Bible and different things that they said and everything. They did say things that sounded like they knew scripture, so I'm not absolutely 100% sure they were saved. I'm pretty sure they were saved, but I'm not absolutely positive. But anyways, I loved my grandmother and my grandfather very, very much. My mom, of course, would tell me that my grandmother and my grandfather, my step-grandfather, was not really as nice as what we thought. I never saw anything to the contrary of that. But anyways, when we were living there, my brother had not turned 2 yet. And my grandmother had a cat named Morris that I used to watch television with. Actually, he would sit there and I could put my arm around him and everything, and he could watch television. And she never really complained about anything. She had a set schedule of everything. She lived through the Depression, so she could pretty much make something out of nothing most of the time. But anyways, she was getting ready to do a birthday for my brother, because his birthday's before mine, a few days anyways. And anyway, she was getting ready to do for his second birthday, and it was the night before my brother's birthday. And we had watched something on TV and everything, and we had dinner and everything, and watched something on TV, and then we had went to go to bed. Well, I got up in the middle of the night to get a drink of water, and I noticed that the kitchen light was on. And when I went into the kitchen, I noticed that my grandfather was laying on the kitchen floor. I ran out of the kitchen and I went and I told my mom that, Mommy, Grandpa's laying on the kitchen floor, sleeping. And she instantly woke up because she knew something was wrong. And then I went in and told my grandmother. And of course, my mom, she went in there and started to try to do CPR and everything, because my mom was, I believe she was studying to be LVN at the time and everything. And so she knew how to do CPR and everything. And we didn't know at the time, but he was pretty much non-responsive to that. Anyways, my grandmother, she called for the paramedics and everything, and you couldn't dial 911 at that time because they didn't have that. You had to dial the number direct. Excuse me. And so anyway, she dialed and called them and got them there. And my mom had been trying to do the CPR and all that and everything, and they tried and everything. Nothing, no response, no nothing. And he had never responded, never woke up the entire time. And we found out a little bit later when they had done to see what was going on, why he wasn't responsive and everything, that, let me see if I can remember exactly what it was. It was, I think, the aortic valve. One of the aortic valves that goes to the heart had worn thin and ruptured. And so when my mom was doing the CPR and everything, technically he was dead. That there was no way for him to be revived. She could have sit there and do CPR all day and it wouldn't have done any good, because there was no way for him to get any blood to his heart. So anyways, after finding that out and everything, everybody was devastated. And my brother didn't really know what was going on. He was too young. He couldn't really understand. And I didn't understand why Grandpa wasn't there, because I thought he was asleep. So then when we had gotten home, my grandmother proceeded to start to get ready to fix things, the cake and food and everything for my brother for his birthday. And my mom told her to stop and not do it. And she said, no, I'm not going to ruin my grandson's birthday. He's going to have his cake and he's going to have food for his birthday. I am not going to let his birthday be spoiled. Even though she was upset and she was grieving, she wanted something. She was trying to do something to keep her mind off of it. She was a very strong woman. And I learned a lot of cooking from her. I learned a lot of how to make things stretch, things like that. And I never saw anything like what my mom would say bad from her. I learned how to do liquid embroidery. I learned how to do crocheting. Learned how to do some of the sewing. I even remember watching old shows with her, like Falcon Crest and Dallas and Knots Landing. And you used to watch, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but Jerry Dunphy on ABC News years and years and years ago. Anyways, this was this would have been about the 70s, because my brother was barely turning 2, and he was born like 73, I think, and 73, so that would have been like 1975, so yeah, before the 80s. And I remember many shows with her growing up, and her showing me how to do the different things and stuff. But anyways, when she went ahead and did the cake and the food and everything for my brother's birthday, and then kind of skip forward a little bit when we got ready to do the viewing and everything for my grandfather, I remember being gathered around in this room and everybody was crying. And I didn't understand why everybody was crying. And I was like, why is everybody crying? Grandpa don't hurt no more. And he's going to go home and be with Jesus. He's going to heaven. No more pain, no more suffering, no nothing. And he's going to be with Jesus. You should all be happy. You know? And remember, I'm like 6 years old. And people still kept crying. They wouldn't stop crying. My grandma was pretty, she was crying, but it wasn't like a boo-hooing. It was like tears, but a lot of the emotion I think she still had held inside. She didn't do a lot of emotional showing that much. She was pretty silent and quiet kind of about her grief. And I think it was one of my cousins or one of my aunts, I'm not sure, but somebody said, "Don't you get it? Your grandfather is dead and he's never coming back. You're never gonna see him again." And I don't know why it hit me so hard, but I was thinking that what I understood, because at that time, I thought everybody went to heaven if they were good people. I thought everyone would go to heaven if they were good people. If they were bad people, they were the only ones that went to hell. I didn't understand everything. And then I thought, okay, well, if he's dead and he's not coming back and I'm never going to see him again, does that mean Grandpa's going to hell? Does that mean he was a bad person? I had lots of questions. And in that little bit of time, it struck me. And I started crying my eyes out. I started bawling. Just uncontrollable tears and squealing like, I was just like, I was horrified. And it was all just pouring out the emotion and tears and everything. And everybody in the room, including my own mother, stopped laughing. Stopped crying and started laughing. They were laughing at me because, I guess she finally gets it. To a 6-year-old. Okay. Very traumatic experience. I just lost my grandfather. Didn't understand. Nobody really explained it. It was kind of mean and cruel how they did it and laughed at me. So, that pretty much made some scars. And I didn't really ask about heaven or anything for a while. I didn't ask anything when anybody died or when anybody was sick and dying. I refused to go around them. I was afraid to go around them because of that. If I thought that they were good and they were going to heaven, because I still didn't understand. And nothing was clarified that, okay, am I going to be all upset and crying over this person because they might go to hell, or they go into heaven, or what. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know. At that point, I didn't want to know because of what had happened to me and how they had laughed at me and made fun of my understanding of everything. So it was pretty cruel. But that's what people did to me. And that's pretty traumatic experience I had when I was very, very young. And my mom lived with my grandma for a while until I don't know exactly how she met my stepfather, or the one I called my stepfather, she never really got married to him. She wasn't married to my dad anymore, but she never got married to him. It was like, because where we're at in California, it was after like 8 years or something, it's like common law marriage. So my stepdad was a mechanic, and he was pretty gruff and rough around the edges, and he didn't show emotion very much at all. Whenever she moved in with him, they had the same room, they shared their same bed and room and everything, but my brother and me had the same room because he didn't want to give up one of his rooms that had like his tools and different things and stuff in. Finally, she convinced him for a room for me, so she had to clear all that area, which actually the first part I had was, okay, my brothers and my room was at the front of the house, and my stepdad owned guns and things like that, but he had them all locked up. So he had these like closets that were locked up that had his guns and everything in it, and Playboy magazines and all kinds of stuff. Anyways, we got little glimpses every time he'd open the door, and padlocked them and everything and that. But anyways, it was a really, really small room we had. And then when I got a sort of like a room of my own, it wasn't really a room of my own per se, because, okay, our house was long, and I was in the back area that was close to the back porch that had been enclosed and made into a room. I kid you not, we had in that room, we had an enclosed outhouse that was in this room. So it was kind of like converted into a bathroom, sort of. So it had a little door and everything on it and all that and everything. And then next to that was like wash tubs and that, which that's what the laundry was done in at first. And we had a stand-up shower, no bathtub. And there was a teeny tiny sink in there in the toilet, in the bathroom part, which was, like I said, a converted outhouse type setup. And the water heater was inside the house next to kind of like where the wash tubs were. And there was a space that could be for a washing machine and stuff hooked up. Did not have a dryer at that time. I don't even think they had dryers at that. They might have. I don't remember us ever having a dryer. My mom hung everything out. And and then closer to where I had my bed and everything. But I had this really tiny space. I mean, the size of probably I would say probably a medium bathroom. That was about the space I had for my bed and like my little dresser and like that and everything. And then a little ways from where I had my head and everything was where we had the refrigerator. The refrigerator wasn't in the kitchen. It was in this back porch part, because there wasn't no room in the kitchen. The kitchen was tiny. There was a little area that you could put a little table, and I mean a small table with chairs. And then there was a little bit of counter space and everything, and room for the stove, and that was pretty much it. And then we had one of those like oil heater type things, but it's set above the floor, so it was like, looked like an actual stand-up heater like you would plug in, but this actually ran with
I thought it ran with gas, but it almost sounded like it had oil or something in it. So I don't know. I mean, it may have had both capacity or something to it. I don't know. And that was in the living room area. Our house would groan and make noises at night, sounded like it was alive. And so most of the time I was afraid until I was really, really exhausted, tired to go to sleep, because I would hear the house creaking and cracking and moving and settling and making all kinds of noise. Scared the crap out of me. And I'm sorry, but it did. It scared me so bad. And we lived there 8-9 years or something until I got ready to go to high school. Lots of things happened here and there in between, but I got bit by a dog, and actually on the same day that my brother got bit by a dog that we had brought home, and I guess he was taunting it through the fence or whatever, and it bit him in the face. I got bit in the leg, and I had a bicycle that I rode around the block that was a Jaws bicycle. It was a bicycle, no training wheels and stuff, but a Jaws bicycle. It actually had the Jaws shark on it, and that's what I rode for a long time until that one messed up, and then I had like not a 10-speed, it was like a 3-speed or 5-speed or something, like almost like a beach cruiser type of bike. And I think that's the one I don't know if it was the Jaws bike or it was that bike that I was riding at the time that I actually got bit. But I come home crying and to tell my mom and everything I got bit by the dog, and I asked my stepdad what had happened, where's mom, because I got bit by a dog. And she goes, well, your brother got bit by a dog too. She took him to the hospital. And I was like, wow. I was thinking, I was very jealous of my brother, and very because she doted on my brother and anything and everything. He could never do no wrong, and I got punished if he got into anything and stuff like that. So, okay, just one other thing. Oh, he had to go ahead and get bit the same day I did. I mean, this is the way I thought, And, yeah, it was funny. It was funny, but, we lived there for years. I made lots of friends. She had some friends she worked with at the time that we went. I guess she was going somewhere with my stepdad or something, and they were watching us for a while, and it was the teenager or almost adult daughters. They were watching us of my mom's friend from work, and they had this ranch house. Anyways, we went to go to the movies. They were going with their boyfriends to the movies, to the drive-in, okay, because it was drive-in at the time. And they didn't want to pay for us. So they had a car at that time where you could pull the back seat down and you could hide in the trunk. And you could actually get air through there because the seat would pull down. So they hid us in the trunk, okay, me and my brother. And gosh, I even remember the movies we went and seen. It was called Jack the Ripper, I think, and Blood Eaters. It was like a zombie movie or something like that. And this was latter 70s, early 80s or something. I think it's latter 70s, 78, 79, something like that, maybe at the time. I don't know. It was, but yeah, we had little chairs and stuff to sit out there, and they at that time you could take food in, in your car. You could take food into it and everything. You didn't have to buy stuff at the concession stand, and unless you wanted to. Pizza was pretty good at that time, back then at the drive-in. Not like it started to get later on. It got kind of dry and rubbery after that. But back then, I mean, you got big size stuff for a good amount of money, and you could bring in candy and then get your popcorn in there, and they had a playground down in the front of the drive-in, where you could go down by the screen, and right below the screen in the front, they actually had a playground that you could go play and everything during the intercession. Or there was another drive-in, but it wasn't that one that we went to, that had like by the snack bar and everything. They had a little playground right there. This one actually had it up the front by the screen. And I mean, I could remember little bits and pieces here and there. I don't remember every little thing of what happened, but I mean, I wasn't even a teenager, I think, at that time. My brother, of course, was 4 years younger than me, so, I mean, I was probably, I would say 12, maybe 11, 12, something like that. And my dad would see us every other weekend, so this was a time that my dad didn't have with us, so my mom was doing something. Like I said, we were with the friend she worked with, and then had went to the movie with her daughters. And I remember little bits and pieces of watching the movie and everything, and it was, let's see, the Jack the Ripper movie, I think, had Klaus Kinski or something in it. I don't remember what date that is, but and then it was pretty graphic. I mean, not like some of the stuff now, but the Blood Eaters, for being like a zombie movie and everything, it reminded me quite a lot like kind of like Dawn of the Dead type. But in this case with Blood Eaters, was these guys, like hippies and stuff, they had went out and everything, and they were out in some camping close to some field area or whatever, and I guess they had found this growing area where they were growing weed, okay, and they wanted to go get some, so they were like in the field part and everything, trying to pick some of it and everything. And there was a plane went overhead that was spraying some kind of chemical or something on the weed to make it grow extra or something. I don't know what exactly it was to do, but anyways, this chemical got on them, and they started getting real sick and doing that and everything, and they croaked, they died, and came back as zombies. And of course, then there's roaming around killing everybody and stuff. I think there was another name it went by or something later on that movie, but that's what we were watching. And I mean, this was like 40 years ago, this movie and everything, and I kind of remember little bits and pieces of it. But yeah, we had weird things happen some when we were growing up. A lot of experiences with my grandmother, good experiences and bad experiences. When we were with my mom, there were good times and bad times too, because for years my mom went undiagnosed because she had what, and still does have it, I believe so, or she thinks she does anyways, and she hasn't been diagnosed otherwise, what's called MPD. And I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it's multiple personality disorder. I think they call it something else now. They call it dissociative disorder. And some crazy lady doctor she wasn't very good, that she went to, I would say probably about a year or two ago, the clinic like she goes to, normally sees a certain doctor and everything, but then for some reason, because it was over full or something like that, she got shoved over onto this other doctor. And the entire time she saw her for about a year, she looked up once, maybe twice at her, and the entire time she was writing. She didn't really do anything but write and ask questions. And she told my mother, okay, my mother had went for years and years and never had a correct diagnosis. When she finally did, it helped a lot, okay, and made her so much better. And then of course that doctor wasn't doing the stuff anymore, so she had to get another doctor. So then she had to find one that she would trust, which, if anybody knows anything about MPD, let's see, the closest thing I could describe to you to make you understand a little bit what MPD is like. I don't know if anybody has seen the old movie called Sybil, or read the book Sybil. She had multiple personality disorder. She had like 200 and some personalities, separate, distinct personalities. And I kid you not, some of these personalities were kids, some were men, some were women. And this is with my mom too. I mean, we literally growing up had to test the water with her because we never knew who she was. She would say one thing to us sometimes, and depending on what circumstance, sometimes 10 minutes later she didn't remember what she had said or done. And it was very confusing, especially if she got angry at you to punish you for anything. And she would do something. A lot of times, excuse me, I got my butt beat. And I say butt beat because she was very volatile and aggressive. And one time, I was cooking and I boiled something over on the stove, and I made the mistake of running from her. And when I ran from her, she ran after me, and she grabbed me by the back of the hair, pulled me down on the ground, and I was doing like this in a defensive position and stuff. And she started kicking me in the head, and I just kept going, oh God, stop. I was like trying to cover up my head and kind of curl up into a ball and everything so she couldn't hurt me. And then all of a sudden she stopped. And I didn't get out of the curled up ball or anything, and I didn't uncover my head because I didn't know. I didn't dare look. And then I heard the back door shut, and it opened and shut. So I know she had went out. So when I got up, I ran to my room and hid in my closet. And that was my safe spot. A lot of times to go and hide in my closet. And that was where I went when my mom was angry, or she seemed like she was one of the bad personalities or anything like that that would have been hurtful, and you just didn't want to be around because that person would terrify you. I love my mom, but at the same time, I didn't at times, because things that she would do and say made me feel like she didn't love me. And I would cry when I was in my closet. I would pray that God would let me die. I would pray that I would have another mama or another family. I just didn't want to be I just didn't want the mother I had. I wanted my mother to be well, and that never really happened. She did get better when they finally diagnosed her right later on, years down the road, but a lot of the damage was done. But all through the entire time, I never felt completely alone. Most people would have felt completely alone, but I didn't. I always felt like someone was there with me. So whether it was Jesus, a guardian angel, the Holy Spirit, I don't know. All I know is I didn't feel alone. And even though it hurt, and there was bad emotional things happen, I didn't feel alone. I wasn't there by myself. I know that might sound strange to some people, but I wasn't alone. But I knew a long time ago when I was really young and I sang in the church with my mom, when my mom at first got saved. But then she had all kinds of afflictions and different things after that. And that's when we noticed that she was different. I truly believe in a way that was some kind of either demonic oppression, demonic something occurring to her causing that to happen. I don't know, honestly. She is not the same person like that now, but for years, even up until my 20s, I was afraid of my mom. I was afraid of my mom for years. Because when you live with that for so many years and someone is like that, and you learn the signs of when they're a different person, you learn what to see, and when you see that, you react. And I usually was very rebellious and stood up and that until my mom would seem to change and become a little different. And then she was one of the scary ones. Yeah, I do mean seriously scary ones, because they were unpredictable and you didn't know what they were going to do. You didn't know if you were going to go to sleep and wake up, or if you were going to have something happen to you while you were sleeping. It was very nerve-wracking and terrifying growing up. And whenever she was diagnosed correctly, years later, and she did therapy and treatment and all that, it was not like that anymore. It wasn't, because when we were growing up, it was kind of like a revolving door. Like, she could be a couple different ones a day, sometimes 10, 20 of them per day. She would be different. When you see somebody that's like possessed by a demon and they act a certain way, that's like, okay, they're one way and then they'll act totally opposite or different. It's kind of like that, but on a larger scale, like multiple ones like that they're all different, but it's the same person. It's just it's hard to explain. We all have different parts of our personality. Well, with an MPD person, all those different parts of your personality, they're in one person, but they're shattered into like little pieces that are actually called like they're a different person, like they're an actual different person. And some of these would do things and the other ones wouldn't remember what they did. And that's what I grew up with most of my life. So that's pretty much somewhat what my child was like until I got in my teens. And when I got in my teens, then of course I was all over the place. I was being rebellious. I was trying to get love and affection and being accepted by anybody that would show me any kind of affection, because I was so hungry for someone to not think I was horrible or terrible or ugly or not worth anything, or to see me for me instead of what I could do for them or what I could give them or what I could just anything, whatever I could get them or whatever I could give them, you know, or where I could get them into, you know, like if I could get them into a special place that nobody could, like a party or something. I would hang out with people that just because they paid me attention, even if it was bad attention, I craved it. I needed it, because to me that was what I associated with people caring, and that the attention, the attention they would give you. They paid attention to you. They acted like they valued what you said or did. And that's how it was whenever I was a teenager. And I took alcohol from my stepdad later on, that after she had left the one that she had the common law marriage, and when she did actually get married after a while, and to another one, and he was a drinker and everything, and obnoxious, ex-Marine, and he wasn't any better, not really. Even though she says my stepdad, the one I said she had common law marriage with, was not that good of a person, I still consider him my stepdad, and I loved him very much. He ended up being eaten up by cancer. The main part of the cancer, when it had all spread, he ended up getting brain cancer, and that's what killed him. But he was who I considered my stepdad, and I loved him. He was as close to my dad as anyone could have ever been. And when she ended up getting married again to the other person, I didn't like him. I didn't trust him. And I said lots of mean things, and being rebellious, and ditching school, and stealing alcohol, and I didn't drink it myself. I gave it to my friends, you know. So, hey, you bring us some alcohol, we'll be your friend, and this and that and everything. And I smoked weed and cigarettes, and went to parties here and there. Later on, I did drink a little bit here and there. Hung out with this person, hung out with that person, doing different things. All kinds of the normal teenage, or I would say somewhat normal teenage, like rebellious stuff that most people did. That's pretty much what I did. And then as I got a little bit older, after one of my boyfriends, around probably 16, after we had broke up, having to do with my with a friend of mine, an incident with her. A few other things happened, but I will save those part of my testimony, because this is getting kind of long here, and tell you more about my teen years, what had happened, the different things that had went on in my testimony there, in another video. So now you know a little bit more about me, but God brought me through all that. He was there. He was never left me, no matter what. And for years, I thought pretty bad of myself and really, really was concerned about what everybody thought of me or how people talked to me and treated me. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter what they think. When you uh, see all the different things that people are doing in the world, but you see things differently after you come to Christ, and you don't see things more in the world, you see more things on a spiritual uh, level. Those things become unimportant anymore. They're not your focus anymore. Your focus is different. And I just thought I'd share the testimony that happened and when I was real young, up and a little bit some of the, because there was lots of things happening, but nothing major in elementary. And as I went like I kind of skipped junior high, didn't I? Anyways, there was a couple things from there. I'll have to share that in another one because there was a couple important things there. So I'll probably maybe expound a little bit on what happened elementary stuff if I can remember something that might be important that somebody might be able to relate to, and some experiences, so that hopefully someone that hears it knows that there's lots of things out there that happen to people, but it's not the end. It's not the worst thing. I mean, it's really bad when you're going through it, but I used to think sometimes that when you were having those things happen to you, and that it was so horrible when it was happening, you just wanted to die. So I know what that feeling's like, but it's not worth it. It's not worth it. That's a lie that the enemy puts in your head. I didn't realize that's what that was at that time, that feeling, that depression and all that. It was because of the things I was under oppression from another, and I didn't realize that's what that was. I thought that's the way it was supposed to be, that maybe I did something wrong to deserve that maybe I wasn't worth being loved. You start to feel things like that when you have that kind of stuff happen to you, and different traumatic things that happen in your life. That's what you think. You start to think those things and you start to believe them. When you come to Christ, all that changes. All that's gone. It's gone. If you relate or understand anything that I'm telling you, and you get what I'm telling you and understand that even if you went through that, it's not the worst thing. There are good things that come out of it too. And it does give you wisdom, and it does give you experience for later on. I've been through a lot of things. I have 50 years. I'm 50 years old. I have a lot of testimony. And it will take a lot to get through a lot of it. And even some of it, as I go over it, like I'm giving the testimony now, there was bits there that I didn't really expound on, that eventually I probably will, because there's quite a bit of it, a lot of different things. But that almost seems distant, like it's a different person, almost like it didn't even happen to me. And technically it didn't happen to me in a way, because that's the old me. That's the old man. That's who it happened to, not who I am now. And that's what you have to remember. That happened in your past, and it's your past. All of it's gone. All of it's forgiven. That's not who you are. Who you are now is who counts. You belong to God, and He is indwelling inside of you. That Spirit's there. If you've accepted Him, that Spirit's there. You can't do that on your own. I've tried. I've tried in my life. I thought I could. And believe me, I did a lot of searching. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Jesus is the only way. And I've tried many different ways, many different paths. Maybe not every single one out there, but I've tried many of them. And they don't work. It's kind of like when you try a diet, a fad diet and everything. It doesn't work. They have all the hype and all the different things that, oh, it's going to work and it can do this for you, they'll do that for you. The same thing with the religions too. Same thing, all these different things. Oh, this is the best thing, blah, 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 blah. No. Jesus is the only truth. And that's what you need to remember. And when you come to him and he washes you clean, you're not that person no more. All that happened to you is gone. Yeah, you kind of remember it as an experience so you can help someone else that might be struggling with this stuff. But it's not you anymore. You're not that person and how that person reacted back there in your past. You come through that with him. You've come with Christ and became different, stronger, better, and even better when we go to him, because we get our perfected bodies. Remember that. You're not that person no more. Start acting like it. Start acting like you know him. You have to show that. You have to show that. You know, be that witness. Be that witness that you know him. Don't just talk about it. Show that you know Christ. Let it shine through you. If you truly do know him and you come to him, it'll be very apparent. Well, anyways, I'm going to cut it short because it's getting really long. And I will continue probably with more testimony at a later time. I'm going to say goodnight and God bless you. Have a good night.